Hello friends, this is your host with a brief introduction to Antoninus, and this is one of the most mysterious names in ancient history. There are several people named Antoninus who lived during the Roman Empire, but the facts of their lives are often obscure or contradictory. I am going to try to tell the story of one particular Antoninus who I think has been treated unfairly by history. Unfortunately, all we have to go on are a few tantalizing scraps of evidence, so be prepared for speculation. But I think it's worth it because what if this man was the first great philosopher of the early empire? What if he bridged the gap between the Stoics of the Republic and the Stoics of the Principate? What if he was the teacher of Epictetus? Keep watching and find out. The first thing we need to sort out is which Antoninus we're talking about. The name Antoninus was a common name in the Roman world. It was a family name, a personal name, and even a nickname. We know that there were at least 6 prominent men named Antoninus who were born in the 1st century BCE or the 1st century CE. So which one am I talking about? Here's a list of all the known Antonines from this period. And what I want to do now is go through each of them and explain why I think it was this guy, Antoninus, who was important. So let's start with Marcus Antonius. Born in 83 BCE, he was a general and politician who played a key role in the civil wars of the 1st century BCE. You may have heard of him. Cleopatra was his lover. He was the adopted son of Julius Caesar and the namesake of the dynasty founded by Augustus. He died in 32 BCE. Now he is a very famous person, but I don't think he is our Antoninus because, well, he was dead before Jesus was born. Okay, how about Quintus Antonius, who was a Roman senator and consul in 32 BCE? He too is pretty famous. He was Cicero's close friend and correspondent, but he was also Mark Antony's brother, and so he would have been an enemy of Octavian. And yet he was executed by Octavian, 22 BCE. Again, he was dead long before our period. How about Titus Flavius Antoninus, the emperor from 96 to 98 CE? Well, we'll come back to him. He's a likely candidate. He's called the Philosopher King, wrote letters to his friend Lucilius. And some of those letters have survived in a book called Meditations. But he doesn't seem to be the Antoninus that we're really looking for, because his life story is fully documented by the historians of the empire. And besides, he was not a teacher of Epictetus. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, Marcus Didius, Antoninus, a senator and consul in 66 CE. Another unlikely candidate because he was executed by Nero in 67, just like his father and his son. And finally, we have Gaius, Julius Caesar, Antoninus, the only Antoninus from this list whose parentage is unknown. He was the Sapphic consul in 135, which means he replaced someone else who died mid-term. And he was probably freedman because the historian Herodian describes him as Epictetus Imperator. That phrase literally means he was raised up as emperor. In other words, he was a freedman who became an emperor. It's interesting, right? Let's take a closer look at him. Antoninus was born sometime in the late 2nd century CE. We don't know the year. We don't know the month. We don't even know the day. We don't know where he was born or the name of his parents. All we know is that he was born a slave. But in spite of that, he managed to become a Roman citizen and eventually a Roman senator, though exactly how he did that is unknown. Perhaps he was manumitted and then worked his way up through the cursus honorum, the traditional path of a Roman senator. Maybe he had a famous ancestor who was a freed man. Whatever happened, he ended up being the Sapphic consul in 135 CE. But how does he fit into the story of Epictetus? Well, according to the philosopher's biographer, the emperor Antoninus was Epictetus's master. When Antoninus became emperor, he chained Epictetus up and threatened to put him to death, unless Epictetus agreed to become his secretary. But when Epictetus was done, he continued to teach philosophy as if nothing had happened. In fact, according to one version of the story, after he was released from his chains, he simply dusted himself off and said, "As you can see, you can't please everyone." Then he went straight to his school and gave a lecture on that very topic. In addition to that, Cassius Dio tells us that Antoninus had freed men in his household who were famous for their ability. One for his skill as a cook, another for his skill as a barber. And they weren't just slaves performing menial tasks. They were highly skilled artisans who took pride in their work. I think this kind of environment fits perfectly with Epictetus's teachings. A man is free when he is independent of external things, including wealth, power, and reputation. Antoninus embodies this philosophy better than anyone else that we know of. He rose above his humble beginnings to achieve success without compromising his values. He didn't use his power to enrich himself or his family. In fact, he seems to have been concerned about the welfare of others. According to Herodian, he gave generously to beggars and helped to alleviate a famine in Asia Minor. It is no coincidence that the theme of slavery runs through Epictetus' philosophy. Epictetus believed that no man is truly free if any other man can do him harm. As a slave, Epictetus couldn't read or write, couldn't leave the house, couldn't speak his mind, could be beaten or sold or killed with impunity. His freedom meant more to him than anything else. If Antoninus wasn't a philosopher, I think he understood that intuitively. I think that Antoninus fits the description of the philosopher king that Dio gives us. He loved philosophy, and he used it to guide his actions as an emperor. It says that he was frugal and austere, and he hated luxury and corruption. It was reported that he was so shocked by the opulence of the imperial palace that he commented, "If I were a private citizen and came to live here, I'd hang myself." He kept his clothes simple and cheap. He wore sandals instead of boots, preferred to travel on foot or horseback rather than ride in style. He dined with ordinary folk and shared their food. He dressed like a private citizen and went incognito so that he could observe the behavior of his subjects. He wanted to know how they lived. He asked them questions about their jobs and their lives. He was always learning, was never satisfied with what he knew. He was succeeded by Titus Flavius Antoninus in 96 CE, and his death date is unknown. But I think that he died in the 2nd century. In any event, I think that he was the real philosopher king, the one who inspired the fictional Marcus Aurelius to write Meditations. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you learned something new. Let me know what you think about Antoninus in the comment section. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe for more videos. See you next time.